Oh down, 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 oh like to say good morning to everyone. God is indeed good. This morning, we're just grateful that He woke us up, framed us in our right frame of mind. Just grateful to be back with the family from Long Island. Grateful to your just great leader, my big bro, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Pastor Thomas. I call him Big Bro for real. Just big bro when it comes to just his scholarship of God's word, the friendship, the laughter and everything. You all have an incredible jewel. Happy birthday there, Pops, and everything as well. Pops, we hope God bless you with many more years. And we're just grateful to be here. And Dr. Thomas, like I said, I have weeks mixed up. I thought I was going to be on East Coast time. I'm on Central Standard, so I'm still in Nashville. And so if I fall asleep while I'm teaching, y'all just forgive me and everything. But we're just grateful to be with you all and for this opportunity that has been extended. Come with me to 2 Samuel Second Samuel chapter 15. As you come with me to Second Samuel chapter 15, I just want to grab verses number 23, then we'll grab verse number 30. As the theme this week, that there is nobody like you, Lord. Second Samuel chapter 15. We'll grab verse 23. Then specifically, we'll grab verse number 30. All righty. And the Bible says, and all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness. If you drop down to verse number 30, the Bible says, so David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives and wept as he went up, and he had his head covered and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went up. Before I jump into my lessons, so glad to have Sister Amos on here from Jackson Street. Sis, thank you for your support. And if there's any other Jackson Street members. But once again, in verse 30, I want to just grab the back part of that verse. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went up. The theme of this week is nobody like you, Lord. I want to give a subtopic for that on this morning and entitled it When Kings Cry. When Kings Cry. Prince had a song entitled When Doves Cry. Now, I don't know if doves cry, but I do know kings cry. Black men who are kings cry. Black women who are queens cry. Hispanic women who are queens cry. Mothers cry. Young men cry. Grandfathers cry. Dads cry whenever they receive positive cancer results. Parents cry when they hear bad news about their children. Life gives us circumstances that every now and then, and sometimes on a regular basis, causes the tears to trickle down from our faces. We cry because we find ourselves in something miserable that we need help in, that we want relief in. And in the midst of us crying, I want to tell you that there are specifically 3 things we need to do. That's pulled from this text that will help us deal with life as we cry. I put my proposition out there early that it's all right to cry. It's all right to cry. It's all right to shed tears. It's part of being human. But there are 3 things we can pull from this passage that will let us know what to do as we cry. And a lesson to be yours. Many of us are familiar with David. We're familiar with David, man after God's own heart. We know what David did with Bathsheba, had Uriah killed. We know Nathan the prophet came and told him that, the sword will not depart from your household. In other words, them chickens, Big Mom used to say them chickens gonna come home to roost. And so the chickens are roosting. And what is amazing is David's son by the name of Absalom is trying to silence his life. It's one thing when your ops, like the young people would say, when the ops trying to get you, but it's on a whole nother level when your own flesh and blood, who you help bring into this world, is your ops who are trying to silence your life. Absalom has went full blast with his 4-year plan that he has stolen the hearts of the people to set himself up as king. And now word has gotten back to David that Absalom has taken over the kingdom. And it's one thing for your landlord to put you out of your house or to put you out of your apartment. It's another thing for your own son to evict you from the place where you stay. That's what David finds himself at. And in verse number 23, in 2 Samuel 15 and 23, the text lets us know, as we just set this up, that and all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron. All the people crossed over towards the way of the wilderness. So he's having to leave the palace, having to leave Mount Zion, having to leave what we would sometimes call the city of David. And they're having to leave in order to get away from Absalom and go to the wilderness. But in verse 30, it gives us a picture of what this traveling looked like. It says, so David went up, climbed up the ascent of the Mount Olives, and wept as he went up, had his head covered, and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads, and they went up weeping as they went up. I want you to picture this. You have David climbing up Mount Olivet, Mount of Olives, as he's crying. The text says he's weeping, and these are tears of sorrow, tears of regret, tears of pain. This is not just no shed a tear here or there. This is some boo-hoo crying. Boo-hoo crying about the fact that your own son is trying to kill you. Boo-hoo crying that you know you're reaping some of the consequences of some of the decisions you've made. Boo-hoo crying, not knowing what will happen to you on tomorrow. And what is amazing is the text says that as he cried, he kept climbing. And it's all right to cry. It's all right to boo-hoo cry. But there is an idea that as we boo-hoo cry in life, we got to keep climbing. We got to keep pushing, because if you think about who David is, he's still God's rightful king. Regardless of what the people say, he's God's rightful king. And there's a lot of people still riding on David. And it is imperative for David that as he cried, to keep climbing, that as he cried, to keep going, that as he cried, not to throw in the towel, as he cried, not to say, Lord, this must be it. He cries, but he climbs. And baby girl, I know you crying, but you keep on pushing towards trying to get that degree. Husband, I know you're crying because you don't know how you're going to fix it with your family, but you keep on trying to be the best man God would have you to be. Son, you may be crying because you're dealing with some emotional and some mental health stuff, but you keep on waking up and trying to push forward each day. He's climbing up the Mount Olivet. What is amazing is that this is the same area that our Savior would do some strong praying on years later. Not only that, but it's also the brook of Kidron. Just for your notes, in John 18, 1 and 2, Luke 22, 39 and 40, we find that Jesus traversed this same territory. And I'm reminded that they used to tell me growing up is that the same stuff Jesus went through, we got to go through as well. The same valleys that our Savior dealt with, we have to deal with as well. So it is amazing that this is a picture of the sufferings that Christ would deal with later on. But what I love about this text is that the text says that David, they're climbing up this mountain. He's barefoot, which means he's in mourning, head covered, sign of mourning. But what is beautiful about it, the text says he has some people with him who are making this climb as well. In other words, David, we love you too much to let you climb this mountain by yourself. We love you too much to let you deal with this pain and not be loyal to you. It speaks to the community that God places with us, that like Paul says, we rejoice with those who rejoice, and we weep with those who weep. When you going through it, we all going through it. When you get blessed, we all get blessed. When you get spotlighted for the great things you do, we all get spotlighted. Why? Because we're in this together. So they're climbing. So they're climbing. And so my first thing I would tell you is that while you cry, you must keep climbing. You can't throw in the towel. You put in too much work. God has invested too much in you for you to throw it all away because of the circumstances you're in. But watch this though. Watch this, because a lot transpires, because sometimes somebody say that when it rains, it pours. Sometimes in the midst of your difficulties, you see who's really who. That sometimes in your trouble, you find out that those who say they were with you, they wasn't with you. They was just with you for what they can get from you, but they never were actually with you. In verse 31, the text says, then someone told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. Now, if you need to know who Ahithophel was, in First Chronicles 27 and verse 33, Ahithophel was David's counselor. He was David's right-hand man. He was the man who knew David's secrets, who knew his strengths, who advised David on war strategies, who advised David how to move. His right-hand man has betrayed him as well. But what is interesting about this is that Ahithophel is the grandfather of Bathsheba. In 2 Samuel 23 and 34, in 2 Samuel 11 and 3, you will find out that Bathsheba was this man's granddaughter, which means, come here, which means that this right-hand man has possibly been holding a grudge against David for years and just waited for an opportunity to take his revenge. Come back here, come back here. Absalom had been holding a grudge against his father. Ahithophel has as well. Somebody said birds of the same feather, they flock together. And so now Ahithophel shows his hand. How in the world you can be my right hand man? It's one thing for you to say, David, I can't rock with you no more. I'm just going to resign. You go your way and I'm going to go my way. But it's another thing to say you my right hand man, but then you switch sides in order to kill me. Man, I've shared some stuff with you that I hadn't shared with nobody else. Girl, I've shared some stuff with you that my own children don't know, that my own flesh and blood don't know. I've shared some stuff with you that only you and God know. And now you're going to turn your back on me in order to try to have me silenced. What do you do that while you're already broken up because of the storms of life, you find out those who you thought were loyal were not loyal? What do you do? Don't go pop the trunk. Don't go get your knife. Verse 31, the text says, then someone told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, oh Lord, not the great God of heaven, the Isaac and Jacob. No, oh Lord, because some situations just make you say, oh Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. In other words, David says, oh Lord, turn the advice he's going to give back on him. Because when we've been betrayed, the best thing we can do is call on the Lord in prayer and say, Lord, whatever they trying to do, turn it back on them. Somebody said that we stand the tallest on our knees. We stand like Shaquille O'Neal on our knees. We stand tall like Yao Ming on our knees. Why? Because prayer is our weapon to fight in the midst of our storms, especially when somebody has betrayed us, because prayer touches God's throne and say, Lord, I need you. Prayer touches the throne and say, Lord, I'm dependent on you. Prayer touches God's throne and say, God, I can't do this without you. God, I can't handle that snake in the grass. God, I can't deal with Shaquita who telling the supervisor everything. Lord, I need for you to handle it. And so David says, oh Lord, turn his foolishness, turn his prayer, turn his advice into foolishness. And so the second thing I would tell you that as you climb, because some stuff will be revealed to you, that the best thing to do is take it to God in prayer, not Facebook, not the gram, not none of that. Now, Lord, I'm going to take it to you in prayer. Now, watch verse 32 as we just work our way through this text. Now, it happened. This is my favorite part. Watch verse 32. Now, it happened when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshiped God. Some versions say where he used to worship. Some versions say where God was worshiped. Watch this. He's climbing. He's crying while he's climbing, but he's climbing nonetheless. He gets word that his advisor is a betrayer. He doesn't stop climbing. He keeps climbing. And as he climbs, he makes it to the place where people worship God. In other words, I'm glad when he heard the news about the betrayal that he didn't stop climbing and say, you know what? It's a lost cause. I'm tired. He kept climbing and he made it to the spot where worship would take place. Lord have mercy. He made it to the spot where people would go to worship God, where he would go to worship God. And I don't know if David worshiped God based off the translation you're reading, but I know he made it to the place where worship will take place at. Because it's highlighting that in the midst of your climbing and crying, in the midst of your praying, don't forget to worship. Don't forget to stop at a place of worship. Don't let the circumstances stop you from coming to where the church meeting at. He goes to the place where worship is taking place. Watch this. Watch God now. Watch God. There was Hushiah, the architect, coming to meet him with his robe torn, dust on his head. David said to him, if you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant. Then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priest with you there? Therefore, it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you shall tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priest. Now, I'm going to just stop right there. Because watch this. I want to show you this now. If you remember, in verse 30, David prays. He says, Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. His prayer gets answered at the place where worship takes place. I'm going to rewind that. He prays in verse 30, Lord, turn his advice into foolishness. Where does God answer that prayer? When does God answer that prayer? It's when he gets near to the place of worship. Sometimes our breakthroughs in the midst of our storms, they happen at the place of worship. It happens when I worship God. It is amazing how God doesn't send Hushiah before he makes it to the place of worship, but as he gets there to the place of worship, that's where the answer to his prayer comes. Some of us can testify that I was on the verge of giving up. I was on the verge of throwing in the towel, that I needed some direction. I needed to know which way to go. And it was not at Denny's. It was not at Waffle House. It was not at Big Homie's Barbecue. It was at the place of worship. I heard something in the sermon. I heard something in the singing. I heard something in the prayer. Somebody came up to me and just told me a word, and it was the word I needed. But it wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have gone to the place where God is worship. So the three things I'm showing you is that it's all right to cry, but you got to keep climbing. And when you're in the midst of it, no matter what bad news you hear, you got to keep praying. Then the third thing is you got to go on ahead and still make it to the place of worship. I know you're heartbroken, but still go on to the place of worship. Now watch this. Watch this. There's one more corner I want to be in. There's one more corner I want to be in, and the lesson will be yours. If you drop down, if you drop down to verse 37, and watch what the text says. Good Lord, watch what the text says. 15:37. It says, so Hushai, David's friend, Lord have mercy. Woo! Scripture calls him David's friend because God knows who to bring in your life when you need a friend. God, who is sovereign, God, who is the ultimate puppet master, know who to bring in your life when you need them, and know who to take out your life when they need to be taken out. So Hushai's David's friend went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. There's this last corner. Watch 16:1. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, what do you mean to do with these? So Ziba said, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and the summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink. Now, when David gets past when he gets past the summit of the mountain, Ziba meets him. Now, Ziba is the servant of Mephibosheth. Just stay with me. Ziba comes to David with ulterior motives because he's going to talk bad about his master. But nevertheless, Ziba brings to David and his people the resources they need. Come here. Ziba is on the crooked side. He like your crooked uncle, because we all got a crooked uncle or a crooked cousin or a crooked auntie. But what happens is, though, God still uses a crooked stick to bless David and his people in the time of need. So God does two things for David. Once David makes it to the place of worship, God sends him a friend who can help him deal with the wartime stuff. But then God sends a crooked person in order to help him deal with the physical stuff. And it shows in the midst that how God will always provide for his children in the midst of their storms. I don't care if it is through Trump, because God can use anybody. I don't care if it's through sleepy Joe Biden. I'm just glad that I'm being blessed. I don't care if it's through Bill Clinton. I don't care if it's through Puff Daddy. I don't care if it's through Drake or Kendrick Lamar. I'm just glad that I serve a God that he's able to use crooked sticks and able to hit a straight lick with a crooked stick. And so Ziba helps David, supplies him and his people what they need. Now I'm sort of crunk because this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible, because I can attest that God will show up. He will show up in the midst of your craziness to give you what you need. About 8 years ago, and I'm closing with this illustration. About 8 years ago, I was in a church softball league. And I don't know if I told this story here because I've told it a few times before. But if I've told it, I'll just tell it again. I was in a church softball league, and the amazing part about it, Thomas, is that they asked me to pray before the game started. So I done prayed. I'm praying for both teams. And I was real sorry. I was real sorry in softball, man. I used to get out, man. I think the only reason they had me on the team because I was a preacher and everything. I was real sorry in softball. But one of our church members played like semi-pro softball, and he had been showing me how to hit. He had been taking me to the batter's box. And so that first inning when they pitched it, boy, I hit that ball real hard. It wasn't no home run. But I think everybody was shocked. Even God was probably shocked how hard I hit that ball. And so I ran to first base. And I was so happy, and everybody was so happy. They were telling me to keep on running. So I tried to run to second base, and they threw the ball from the outfield to the infield. And so I'm thinking I'm Barry Bonds or King Griffey Jr. I tried to slide into second base. I forgot that this ain't no elementary base. This is real life base. And so foot hit the second base, broke my foot. As a matter of fact, I broke my ankle, broke my leg as well when they rolled me over. And you know how your foot points straight. My foot was dangling to the side. Yeah, I slipped and said I slipped and said some words, and they tried to pick me up, and I said a cuss word then. I said, don't put me on my feet. And so it was so bad. It was so bad that they had to call the ambulance out there on the field. Ambulance came out there on the field, took me to the hospital. The break was so bad, I was in the hospital for 4 days off a broken leg and a broken foot. They had to put a metal rod from my knee to my ankle, a metal plate, and 18 screws. Metal rod, knee to my foot, a metal plate, 18 screws. In the hospital 4 days. The name of my doctor was a man by the name of Dr. Clark. And Dr. Clark looked like one of them movie stars. And so after the 4 days, he sent me home with some oxycodone. And he said, listen, if you ever run out, just call my office and we'll get them to you ASAP. I was like, all right, I got you, doctor. I got you, doctor. So about 2 weeks passed, and I'm starting to run. I'm starting to run low on my pills. And I'm like, man, I don't need to be sitting up here in pain because I got high blood pressure problems, and I want my blood pressure to go up. And so I'm down to my last pill, and it's a Thursday weekend coming. So I'm like, let me go ahead and call the doctor's office, like Dr. Clark said. And I'm gonna put a pin in it, and I'm gonna back up because I broke my leg on a Thursday. That Wednesday, before I broke my leg, we ended our gospel revival with Arnelius Crenshaw. We ended our gospel revival with Brother Crenshaw. And sometimes church makes CDs, or sometimes the CDs don't work. So I had met this particular preacher at the convenience store because we stayed not far from each other because he wanted a set of the CDs. And so I gave him a set of the CDs on that Wednesday night after the gospel meeting was over. And then I broke my leg on that Thursday. And so I'm at the house. I'm at the house on that Thursday. It's about 2 weeks later. And so I called Dr. Clark's office because I need some more oxycodone. I'm down to one last pill. And the nurse says, Mr. Jackson, we're busy right now, and we can't get to you till on Monday. Now it's Thursday. I'm down to one pill, and she say she can't get to me till Monday. Now, by that time, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do because I'm down to one pill. I know I'm going to be in pain. I thought about, like I said, I'm trying to live for the Lord, but I had some weed smokers at my congregation because I could smell it when they would come to church. I wish y'all would help me be real. I wish y'all would help me be real. And I knew a couple of the weed smokers because I could smell it on them whenever they come to church. I say, Lord, if I have to call them, I have to just call them and say, hey, your preacher needs some weed in order to help him deal with this pain. I didn't want to do that, but that was not out the question and everything. And so as I began to look through my phone for the numbers for the weed smokers, because the preacher was about to get some weed from them, I got a phone call. From the same preacher that Wednesday 2 weeks ago. And he said, bro, Chris, I said, yeah. He said, this bro Or. I'm like, what's up, bro? Or he said, man, them CDs, Brother Crenshaw, you gave me, there's nothing on them. I said, ain't nothing on them. He said, yeah, there ain't nothing on them, man. Ain't nothing on them CDs and everything. He was like, can you meet me today to bring me some more, to give me some more CDs? I'm like, bro, oh, you hadn't heard? He was like, no, hadn't heard what? I say, man, that next day I broke my leg. I've been down. He was like, man, I ain't even know. And then he said, who did your surgery? I said, it was a doctor by the name of Dr. Clark. He said, Dr. Clark, that's on Inner Perimeter Road, Valdosta Orthopedics Association. I say, yeah, that's him. He said, I'm his operating room nurse. How they treat me? Boy, y'all ain't with me. You should be shouting right about now. You should be shouting right about. Lord have mercy. You should be shouting right about now. He say, I'm his operating room nurse. How they treating you? I said, Brother Orr, they saying they can't get me my pain medication till next Monday. He said, don't worry about it. I got you covered. About an hour later, the pharmacy was calling saying, Mr. Jackson, we have your medicine ready for you. Where you going, preacher? We serve a God that when you try to do right, when you're tempted to do wrong, he'll show up in the midst of your crisis to give you what you need. He's always on time, like they used to say, but he's not just on time. He's always doing what's best. And sometimes the failure on the Wednesday 2 weeks ago was setting you up to be blessed on the Thursday 2 weeks later. The setback that you had a long time ago, God just orchestrating that thing so he could bless you. That rekindled my faith. That showed me that God can take care of me even when I can't take care of myself. That God will show up for me even when I'm flat on my back. And we see that in the life of David. We see that as he kept climbing, he prayed, and as he prayed, God showed up at the place of worship, gave him a friend, and sent a crooked stick to bless him in a mighty way. I'm done with your family. May God bless you. May God keep you. We'll see you all tomorrow morning.